Here are some conditional compilation examples. So right here, this is actually where you would use it for some platform-specific code. So if you had a file that was platform-specific, this is how you would include it. And so you would have just the if. In this case, we're saying if it's not Win32, which most likely you're going to say if it's Android, if it's whatever, include this one here. And so this code right now will never get compiled because we're compiling for Win32. This will never get hit. So here's what it would look like to test for Windows. So this is Win32. This is Windows. We're saying if it's Windows, and that's it. And then in this case, we're just using, these are unit tests, and we're going to assert that this is Windows. Here's how you would test for the compiler version. So that is the value for Seattle. So if it's greater than equal to that, it's actually Seattle Update 1 has got a 1 at the end of it. And then here is the version for XE8. So since we're doing if, else if here, we're saying if it's not the Seattle, then if it's greater than equal to 700, then it must be XE8. Since it could, obviously 710 would be Seattle, but since we know it's not greater than equal to 710, then it must be between the two, which makes it XE8. And if it's neither, then we, in this case, we're just saying fail. So that's Win32. So here's a test for Android, or saying not Android if it's not Android. So that's our pass condition, is this is not Android. And then here is how you would test for iOS. You would say if it's Apple and ARM or ARM64, then this would be true, which would mean this is iOS. In this case, since we're compiling on Win32, we're logging that as a failure because this obviously would be Win32 is not iOS. But that's the syntax you would use to test for iOS. Okay, so that is the conditional compilations, a few variations of syntax. And then here is the platform services. So there's two different ways to use platform services, the long way and the short way. So the long way, I'll explain both of them here. We're going to say if platform services current supports platform service, and then we pass the UUID of, in this case, the clipboard service. That short URL I showed you, which I'll show you again in here in a minute, gives you a list of all the platform services and which what includes you need to use. So in this case, it's an FMX platform. Actually, FMX platform defines T platform services and also clipboard service. But the short URL will explain where the other ones are defined at. So in this case, this code only going to be executed when the platform supports the service, when the platform supports the service we asked for. So important differentiation between conditional compilation is this code always gets compiled, but whether or not it's executed depends on if the platform supports it. Okay? Important differentiation. In order to use the clipboard service, we need an instance of it. And so we're just going to call platform services current get platform service, again passing the UUID of the service we want. And now we have a clipboard service, which we can then use, and we're just going to use a unit test to prove that we actually used it successfully. So that's the long way. Now, I say it's the long way, but it could actually be the shorter way if you don't actually want to access the clipboard service. If you just want to test for its presence, then all you need is this test here, and you need none of this code in here. Whatever code you're going to put that's going to only execute on that clipboard service being present. So the short way combines those two statements. So see here, supports platform service, UUID of FMX clipboard service, and then we pass in a reference to the clipboard service here, and we get it out. It's an out parameter on the support service. So if you pass both two parameters on here, the second one's an out parameter, and you'll get back an instance of the clipboard service, which you can then use. So it's shorter if you want the reference. If you don't want the reference, then this way is shorter. So that's the brief overview for platform services. So we're going to look at a couple examples here, one in the RTL and one in the FireMonkey framework. And you'll see this pattern continues throughout all of the FireMonkey framework and RTL. So this is system.notification. So if you want to include notifications, you would use system.notification. Now, if we jump down to the implementation uses clause, you'll see right here we have ifdefs here. So ifdef iOS, use system.ios.notification. These are the only ifdefs in here. That's it. No other ifdefs. Okay, so there's not ifdefs sprinkled throughout the file, making the file more complicated. They're only here in the uses clause. Now, the system.notification implements the base classes, interfaces, common behavior, etc. So if we look at system.mac.notifications, in here, we see that it implements the T platform notification center which is based on the T base notification center. If we jump back into our system.notification and look for platform notification center, we'll see right here in the internal get instance is when it gets an instance of that. Okay, so this is how the system.notification implements the platform specific implementation. Now we looked at the Mac version and the Android version. We're seeing exactly the same pattern here. So now let's look at FireMonkey's T web browser. Again, we have a fmx.web browser. If we jump down to the implementation uses clause, we'll see some ifdefs in here. Now this is using both ifdef and ifdefined. And again, this is the only conditional compilation in here is in this uses clause. And here, if it's Android, we're going to use webbrowser.android or webbrowser.cocoa. So if it's iOS or Mac OS 10, it uses webbrowser.cocoa. So we can take a look at those implementations here. And what they do on this pattern is it registers a platform service. So register web browser service adds a platform service. And that's once that service is added by webbrowser.android, then fmx.webbrowser is able to implement that service, what that service implements, or it's able to use that service, I guess. We'll take a look at Cocoa, the exact same thing here. Register web browser service. So some of the advantages of this is if you have somebody on your team that knows Cocoa really well, they implement the webbrowser.cocoa, and someone that knows Android really well implements the webbrowser.android. It keeps that separate. When something changes on Android, you only change the .android implementation. So it has a nice separation. Again, very few conditional compilations, only right here in the uses clause are the only place to see them.